Revenge is a dish best served cold. Here's a look at the McFarlane Toys Mortal Kombat 11 Winter Purple Sub-Zero. Another leader in the Mortal Kombat franchise, Sub-Zero is a formidable fighter who has the innate ability to control ice in many forms and is driven by a fierce rivalry with his nemesis Scorpion. Before we get down to the review of Winter Purple Sub-Zero, I kid you not, that's actually what he's called online. Sounds like a new fragrance for Febreze. First thing we're going to want to do is figure out how tall the figure stands. You know, speaking of online, checking around to various online sites, this wave that we've been looking at of Mortal Kombat 11 figures, many sites have slated for release in March 2021. I guess I must have just lucked out. I found these over at commandstore.ca. That would be CMDSTORE.ca. I was able to actually pick up this whole wave there. I guess maybe they got them just a little bit early. We're going to take, though, the tape measure to the very top of Sub-Zero's head. That seems like a good place right there. According to the readout provided to you, the viewing audience, you can see that Sub-Zero stands 6.9 inches in height. Let's switch that quickly to centimeters, revealing that Winter Purple, I can't even see that with a straight face, Winter Purple Sub-Zero stands 17.6 centimeters tall. Bringing in the other figures that we've had a look at. There's Liu Kang. Really like that figure. Still, though, I think my favorite by far is Shao Kahn. Didn't really think it would have been swayed at all by looking at Scorpion and Sub-Zero, considering that they're already repaints. And speaking of repaints, there's In the Shadows version of Scorpion. You know, it's really a shame, though. I mean, if you're a big fan of repaints, and I will say, at least to the credit of these figures, these are good-looking repaints. But if you are somebody that collects repaints, you're fine. If you're somebody that doesn't collect repaints, you're ultimately buying a wave of figures. Like if you buy the complete set, you're basically getting figures that you may already have in your collection via the, of course, Sub-Zero and Scorpion, figures that we already gotten before. Longtime viewers to this channel, or viewers that like to go back painfully and watch those older videos of mine, I'm so sorry in advance, will probably already know that I have, in fact, reviewed the Mortal Kombat 11 Scorpion and Sub-Zero, although those were very different variants to the ones that we're going to be looking at with this line, this wave. The Scorpion, for example, was that really interesting ice blue translucent plastic. Although it does share very much the exact same mold as the figure that we're going to be looking at in this review, that one was done in that translucent blue plastic, which unfortunately at the time of doing this video, I have no idea where I've put that. Apologies again in advance. Looking at the accessories, you may also find an experience of a little bit of deja vu if you have collected any one of these Sub-Zero figures in the past, or even just again, if you've watched that earlier review, you will recognize the following accessories that we're going to be looking at right now. For starters, he comes included with a couple of axes, all done in that Winter Purple. One thing you probably already noticed right off the bat, is that styrofoam? No, it's not. That's paint. And I'm not even sure why that paint ended up here, because nowhere on the figure seems to be white. Well, I guess that's not true. There's a little bit of white on his front skirting. But I don't know why there would have been a little bit of white paint that found its way onto the end of the blade of the axe here. I'm going to see if I can actually scrape that off. I probably could have scraped it off before the video started recording, but I wanted to actually show you guys, yes, there are ever so often, there's a time, an incident where I find myself little QC issues. I did want to mention at least in this video. The axes, as you can see, start their way with being translucent plastic, but as they get progressively further up to the head of the axe, you can see they get all this nice additional violet purple, or winter purple. Strange, again, that they would call it that. Again, I really like these axes. I like the ones that we had gotten before. The other ones that I had gotten before would have been, again, all that translucent blue plastic. But I think it works quite well with the purple. He comes included with those. He also comes included, similar to the one that we had looked at before, with the removed skull. I'm sure it was removed probably against the wishes of the person that actually owned this original piece of property. But the axe does look good. I don't know if you can actually make that out or not, but this particular skull still seems to have something remaining behind. A little bit of an eyeball that's hanging out from the socket. You see it right there? Boy, that is a neat looking gruesome bit of detail. Nothing does change. If you had picked up the other Sub-Zeros, this is basically the exact same accessory. Although again, clear plastic, and you get that nice little bit of purple that's added to the top of it. All of the accessories, the things I just mentioned, can be held in his hand. So, for example, you want to take the skull. I know most people will probably be anxious to display him with the skull. You basically just feed that down his fingers. I don't like to do this too roughly, though, because being that it's made of clear plastic, I really don't want that to break. But if he does want to have himself a bit of a conversation with the skull, why not? Maybe the skull could offer up a little bit of advice of things that Sub-Zero should be doing differently in life to just kind of wrong the rights the wrongs. You know what I mean. So he does come include with those, like I said, and of course the axes if you want to display them in his hand. Just a shame, really, that he does have the paint on the one hand, one axe head there. You can see he holds the weapons perfectly fine. Not going anywhere either. I mean, yeah, you can wiggle it, but it's not going to be coming off out of his hand. He does come with a couple of other things, too. When you're looking at the figure, you sort of assume that he does have things that could be removed. Like, for example, the blade on the side. Nope, can't remove it. These little small daggers? Nope, can't do that either. What about this one? No, you think you would have learned something by now. No, none of these, sadly, can be removed. They're all molded to the figure. You can't take them off. But that's fine. I mean, I don't expect every single thing on a figure to be removable. I mean, that involves a whole lot of additional molding and things that could potentially get lost or broken as well. Getting a closer look at Sub-Zero's face, it is nice, I must say, to finally get a fully painted version of Sub-Zero. Because again, the one that we had looked at before was that translucent blue plastic. And don't get me wrong, that translucent blue plastic looked sharp on the figure. Do yourself a service and do check out that video if you get a chance. Apologies in advance. But I do like the look of this one. It's more traditional looking Sub-Zero. The skin color may be slightly different, and it's not more the familiar blue colors that you would expect to see with Sub-Zero. But again, like most of the checked boxes are still there. The mask is done nicely as well. You got the little scar there above his eye. I always like this particular molding of his head. The original Sub-Zero would, of course, had a hood. Hoods are now long passé. It's not the trending thing anymore. You really like to have the fully encased kind of headpieces that they wear now. But that looks really cool. I like, again, that little bit of silver on the side, kind of like a little meshed chainmail sort of on the inside of his mask. Really nice looking head sculpt, though. The rest of the body, again, stays consistent with all the Sub-Zeros released before. I think even at the time that this guy is coming out, and this one is slated, I think, for release in March 2021, depending, again, where you decide to pick up your figures for yourself. I think there's also a bloodied, frozen version of him that also has some additional green. So, believe you me, McFarlane Toys is getting a lot of mileage out of these figures. Some would like that, some others don't. You know, if, again, you picked up this entire set, technically the only two brand new figures would be the Shao Kahn, as far as I know, and the Liu Kang, unless he has repainted those at some point down the road as well. But again, like the skin is slightly more of a darker color. It's got a lot more brownish kind of gray color scheme to it than I think the one that we got before. Lots of browns, really, when you look at the overall sculpting. The browns, of course, on the tunic sash that he wears on the front. This is all done in nice brown with some nice panel lining done also in the black. The shoulder pieces, painted all nicely in silver. It does have a nice forged look. What I mean by that is when you look really closely at it, and hopefully the camera is going to be able to do that, you can sort of see where he would have forged this maybe by his own hand, or forged by perhaps individuals that craft the armor that he wears. Whatever the case may be, it does look pretty good. Yes, there is a little bit of paint, and that may be on a figure-to-figure basis, but I do have to point it out on this figure. There's a little bit of blue. Unfortunately, that has made its way from this point to this area right here. A little bit on the side. For me, I just chalk it up to it looks just a little bit like a little scuffing on the armor. Not to really mention as well, in the case, at least on mine, I'm going to be looking at the figure this way as well. I don't know many people that are going to be displaying their figures like this, but again, I just want to mention that there's a little bit of paint problems just on the top of mine at least. I did mention, where did that white come from? There is white technically on the back of his tunic, and there is white on the front, lower down on his skirting. Maybe one of those could be the culprit as to why there's a little bit of paint on the axe. I don't know the story behind it. I'm not really overly invested in the idea of wanting to track down the root cause of why there's paint on the axe, but I just know for the fact there's a little bit of paint there. Further down on his torso here, you got the lower end tied off knot of his lower skirting. Nice sculpted detailing also added to the legs. Every bit of place on this figure does have some nice texturing. Even the places that don't really get a whole lot of paint, like for example his legs, which I'm guessing is just basically the black molded plastic. And yet, even though it doesn't have the paint, I feel it more than makes up for it because it's got some nice sculpting that's been added to it. On the side, you've got a few extra daggers. This guy has daggers like people have lunch bags. It's not really a relevant, that's probably not, I have a lot of lunch bags. That's probably not the most relevant comparison to be making, but he's got a whole lot of additional little daggers. So wherever he's fighting, whoever he's fighting, he always seems to have something on the ready that he can pull and whip at somebody. Yeah, I do have a lot of lunch bags now that I think about it. Has some nice silver there on the front shin guards and some additional silver there on the fronts of his shoes. And just to show you, yes, there is some detailing that they'd actually sculpt on the undersides of Sub-Zero's feet. Places that you don't generally tend to look, but yet they're there on the figure. Looking at the articulation on Sub-Zero, his head rotates back and forth. I feel like I'm a little more comfortable being able to do this on this figure. I was a little more apprehensive, I feel, when we were looking at that ice blue Sub-Zero, just because, again, it was all translucent blue plastic. Now, his head does rotate, like I said, back and forth. The one thing about it, though, is I don't know if you can actually see this piece of his head sits inside sort of like the cavity of the neck, kind of give you like a more fluid shape of the sculpt. When you start rotating his head, yes, it's going to break that up a little bit and it's going to look like a piece that's just levitating over top. There's really no way around that. But the head does move back and forth. It moves up, it moves down, and you can get a little bit of that rocking back and forth. Shoulders rotate out, and in similar fashion to other McFarlane toy releases, he does have that cup joint. See right there? This does allow for additional movement forward, and it also allows for the arms to arch backward. It also helped a little bit too when I had the figure displayed at the beginning of this review with him holding the axes in his hand. Those cup joints, while they're somewhat non-intrusive, sometimes the figures do look like they stand a little bit more because they've got them. In a case here of Sub-Zero, I think they're just conveniently hidden away there, tucked in there, so I don't feel like it breaks and disrupts up the sculpting of the figure. But the arms rotate all the way around. I will say, I don't know if it's just mold degradation because they've used this mold so often, but I find really, really loose arms here on Sub-Zero. Didn't have that issue with Scorpion, and yet I do seem to have it there with Sub-Zero. Anyways, he does have a swivel at the bicep. You can double hinge on the elbow, and you can rotate the hand all the way around. In addition to that, he also has an upper torso ball joint. That's really it for the way of ball joints in his torso because he's got so much sculpting right here. They didn't break it up a second time, so he really only has that single ball joint. Just be careful then when you are rotating it back and forth. Though these are softer plastic, they seem to be pretty good at being able to hold up, rotating the waist back and forth. Just again, these smaller pieces, the dagger handles there. I feel like if you're doing it too often and you're bringing it too close to those, you may start developing stress marks around those handles. Just FYI. The legs split out quite comfortably for me, maybe not for him. He has a swivel, kind of at the top there, where basically this just attaches to the ball joint. Lower half rotates. He does have the double hinge on the knee. No articulation here necessarily on the boot. Basically, when you're rotating here, you're just basically rotating above the knee. Foot goes back and forth this way. You can also ankle pivot slightly, and he does have, again, that much appreciated toe articulation. Certainly came in handy at the beginning of this review when I had him pose the way that he did. He is a nice looking figure, a very posable worthy figure, and he does have pretty cool looking accessories, all of which are carryovers from the ones that we got before. Nothing really new to report here with Sub-Zero. And if you are down with the idea of getting just yet another repaint, because again, we've gotten a lot of mileage out of both Scorpion and Sub-Zero, Winter Purple, the Febreze Sub-Zero, actually ended up being a nice looking figure when having him out of the packaging here. FYI, by the way, I did a quick tally count on my lunch bag situation, and I have 8 lunch bags. I don't know why I keep holding on to all the lunch bags. It's not a case, I just want to stress this. It's not a case where I feel like I'm collecting them. I think that'd be a pretty sad collection. I think I'm only just adding on to the ones and just failing to get rid of the others. Maybe in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, well, I never know when I may need another lunch bag. Maybe I may have a bunch of company coming over and they're all going to be saying, wish we had some lunch bags. And then I could say, well, I've got eight lunch bags. You guys can pick which one is your favorite for the time being and only borrow them. I'm not going to be giving them away with the intended plan that you guys are going to be keeping these things. I know I'm giving you basically more information than really all of you care about right now. Speaking of Sub-Zeros, we have gotten a lot of Sub-Zeros, and maybe that's the connecting point right there. A lot of Sub-Zeros we've gotten. I think we're now counting up to probably like 4 or 5 of them, even like checking online. While this one is being slated to release in March, which for some reason I got this one a little bit earlier, There's also another slated Sub-Zero, I think it's coming out, that's got a green tunic, and I think he's called like Frozen Damaged Sub-Zero. The point I'm really saying here is that McFarlane Toys is getting a lot of mileage out of these figures. And maybe some of the mileage is also resulting in some of these figures developing loose joints. I didn't have that so much with Scorpion, but I did notice here with Sub-Zero, the Winter Purple Febreze Sub-Zero, he is really loose in the arms. I'm hoping it's not going to get any looser than what they are. Will it be a case where every new Sub-Zero will find this humbled collector going out there and picking it up? Probably not. I'd like to think my obsession hasn't gotten to that point, not at the lunch bag level at least. There may be a case where maybe a new Sub-Zero may come out and the color scheme may tempt me. I may pick that one up. But I think I'm content for the time being getting this one, the clear blue one that I couldn't unfortunately show you guys in this review because I couldn't find it. And I'd like to maybe eventually get the original Sub-Zero in his traditional blue colors. This one is close enough at least to being a traditional color schemed Sub-Zero. I don't think I'm going to deviate too far away from that. Although, again, the story when it comes to collectors. We can easily be so quickly pulled down that rabbit hole, and before you know it, hey, here's my collection of 8 Sub-Zeros. And you'll also notice behind each one of those Sub-Zeros, it's a lunch bag. It's a long story. Let me know down below in the comments section what you guys think of Winter Purple. Can't you see that with a straight face? Winter Purple Sub-Zero. It's a pretty cool looking figure. Oh, I see what I did there. That's kind of clever. Let me know what you guys think of this figure, and if you would find yourself picking up more of the same figure. I know it's sort of a question that I did carry over from Scorpion's review, I believe. But would you pick up more figures, even if you have the existing figure already in your collection? Like, what would have to... Okay, here we'll deviate a little bit from the previous question. How much of a figure would have to change before you would consider getting another one? There you go. It wouldn't have to even be like a repaint. Repaint, some people would be content to getting a repaint of Sub-Zero. But how much, for example, of one figure would have to change? A brand new head sculpt? Different accessories? What would have to change that would result in you buying the same figure over again? That's a good question. I'm glad I thought of that. If you are new to this channel and you're liking all the content you're seeing, and you certainly want to stay on board and see more content coming your way, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below, turn the bell notification on, and yes, by all means, come back to this channel, because even though we have wrapped up shop on the Mortal Kombat 11 for the time being, there is definitely a lot more McFarlane toy reviews lined up and coming your way. So keep your peepers ever frozen and peeled. Winter Purple Sub-Zero. That's his name. Promsies. Lots of stuff coming your way, guys. So as always, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.